So now we're doing a second interview. The first one that we did was about, gosh, it was probably 10 years ago. So my name is Scott Reyner, and this is my mother. What's your name?
Betty James,
And you are how old?
88.
And you can look in the camera if you want, so when you talk to me.
Okay.
And really we're doing this just to put you on record for any ancestors, if this even exists, you know, years to come, this video, people that long after we're dead, just to have on record, just to have them know who came before them. And
what it's like to be 88. And the date of today, Scott?
yes, today is
13th, I think. Or
October 13th,
Or
1924, and we are in
1924.
2024.
2024.
100 years goes really fast. And I am her son, her second son, and I am 65 years old. So that brings us to the first question. Did you ever think that you would have two sons that are 65 or older?
Never thought about it.
How old do you think you would live? Do you have any idea? Your mom lived to be how old?
96.
And her mom lived to be?
I think more than that.
Yeah, 90.
Closer to 100.
Yeah, she was almost going to be 100.
Yeah.
So her grandmother, who lived to almost to be 100, her name was, we called her Dearie. Her name was Blanche Norman.
Right.
And she had several sisters, and some of them did live to be over 100, correct?
Yeah, they were all Bergmans, and then she married a Norman.
Okay,
So,
and they were from where?
New Orleans.
You remember the city?
New Orleans?
Well, Patterson, Louisiana.
Are you talking about where Blanche was born?
No, not where
Dearie?
they were born, just weren't they from Patterson?
My grandmother her whole family was from New Orleans, but my mother,
Yeah, but then they moved.
but then she married Felix Norman and they moved to Patterson.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And you were born where? You were born in Lexington, right?
Mhm.
North Carolina. And
Yeah.
you live where now?
I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Okay. So these are going to be questions that we're just going to skip all over the place. They're not in any order. Let's talk about politics of the nation right now. What's happening? Who's running for president? And just talk about that a little bit.
Okay, well, we have one candidate running for president who has been president in the past, Donald Trump. And he is running opposite Kamala Harris. And it's a very race fraught with anger and bitterness and name calling on the one side.
So the Republicans have gotten this new name of the MAGA Republicans, Make America Great Again, MAGA. And in our view, they are very extreme.
Not extremely good, extremely bad.
Yeah, just extreme in what they
In
stand
their
for.
feelings.
And so anyway, they say it's going to be a very tight race. I hope.
Now, this is the former President Trump who is running as somebody who was responsible for, in January 6th, now I guess it's been 4 years.
Yeah, which we call, and anybody Democratic would call an insurrection.
Right, 4
They
years
would
ago.
call a peaceful protest.
When some policemen were killed and one protester was killed trying to break into the Capitol building. So,
And I'm sure for people, if years to come, this is a part of history, you can judge for yourself. You'll see the videos of what happened, just turmoil. Anyway, just wanted to cover that a little bit. And now I want to go back, because I happened to see on one of the TV shows what was happening in the 60s. It was, I didn't know how traumatic the 60s were. I knew about several assassinations, but you saw the same show because I asked you. It started with, it was a time, that whole decade was a time of where America had gone to war with Vietnam. It was a war that we became a part of because we were trying to defend, I guess, democracy, but it was in
because
Vietnam.
because especially one of the senators in North Carolina felt that communism would spread all over the country if we didn't go to Vietnam and stop the communists from North Vietnam invading the South Vietnam. Problem was that some period of time ago, France had been in Vietnam and had finally pulled out because
I guess too much killing of their
yeah,
people.
I mean, it wasn't, they realized that there wasn't any, they weren't defending anything. So then time passes and America has the opportunity to either go into Vietnam and
Continue to fight for
To-
democracy.
so that was the thought. On the other hand, John F. Kennedy was president during the time that we were sending advisors into Vietnam to try to determine what our best course of action would be. And the thought is that the feeling is, and my feeling is after doing a lot of reading, is that John F. Kennedy was assassinated because if he had lived, we would never have gotten into Vietnam. And economically, there were a lot of people who felt Vietnam would be a good thing for us to get into. I'm not sure it was so much protected us from communism as they said, but economically, war is good for a country.
So that was around 1963. JFK was assassinated, I think in 64. And then about 4 years later, Robert Kennedy, his brother, was assassinated. He was running for president. So this show that I saw was talking really about the campus
Kent
riots
State.
that were against, it was civil unrest, trying to get blacks to have equal rights.
And to get Americans out of Vietnam.
Right, and so I hadn't remembered all the protests and all the blood and the people that were beaten by the police. during
Well,
this
you're
time.
talking about kind of two different things, I think. One of them, I thought you were talking about Kent State,
Well, that was one of the things.
okay, university, where there were students rioting against the Vietnam War.
We don't need anything.
That might be.
Let's keep talking, Mom.
And that was against the Vietnam War.
Sorry, it fell off the floor.
Yeah.
Our sign. Thank you. Sorry.
Scott had just gone to the door because there was a knock on the door. We're in the hotel room. And I think at the same time what Scott was talking about was racism that was going on in Alabama, in Birmingham.
In Berkeley, California.
And, yeah, well, in Berkeley, California, most of those were marches against Vietnam. But at the same time, we had our own racism problems in Alabama, Mississippi, where else?
Well, that's okay. I just had not realized it was so widespread, and so it was during the hippie movement, Woodstock. Everybody was drugs. You know, that was what Woodstock was. It was a music festival. It was known for just people being free, and this was trying
Living
to,
their life.
yeah, and trying to extricate ourselves from Vietnam, which didn't seem to have a purpose at that time. So now we're going to change the subject. So you married my dad in Columbia, South Carolina. So I wanted to ask you, describe my dad. So now they were divorced after just a few years, separated on and off, and then divorced, had 2 kids. What kind of person was he? Good or bad? Be honest.
When I met him, he was somebody who wanted to have a good time. I met him in a temple. What a great place to meet a guy and believe that your life is going to be perfect. He was with his mother. His dad had died, and they were celebrating every Friday night. He was going to services for that first year after his father died. And he offered to take me. I had gone to temple because a former rabbi of mine was there and had asked me to come. And Charlie gave me the ride back to my dormitory. And I think he dropped his mom off at her house, I guess, before he took me back to the dorm. And on the way back to the dorm, he stopped at the Elks Club, which was kind of a gambling, drinking club. and I guess he just seemed dashing, and
He was Jewish.
he was Jewish, wined and dined. And I guess, yeah, the fact that he was Jewish was probably a plus because.
So I'm going to speed you up
Okay.
because I don't want this to.
Okay.
I want to make sure my camera records all of this. So I really want describe him as a person now. I mean, because I know you.
The way he was then, he was dashing. He wined and dined me. And
you know,
you're talking
having
about
gone
after
through
we
a
got married?
divorce. Yeah, but I mean, just you know,
Okay,
if you were
so-
describing me, describe him knowing that most people, when they get divorced, they don't stay friendly. They are antagonistic. It's a bad divorce, but you've never really felt that way. So, as a person, good person, bad person, immature, mature, whatever.
Okay, yeah, immature would be the word.
Okay.
And a good time Charlie. And but somebody who cared about his children, who really cared about me, really didn't want me to be hurt, really wanted his kids around. And so
How was it that you, when you were getting a divorce, you overlooked the immaturity and
because
became friends?
everybody has to live their life. They have to live their life according to their own desires and wills. And I just felt like it was too bad. It was too bad that our lives didn't sync, but I couldn't really blame him for that.
And what I would say is how, because I never even knew divorce was a bad thing, they were so friendly, it was that she realized who he was. He was a good person. He just was not a great marriage partner. But they got through that and then became friends, and you know, so I really never knew that divorce was ever a bad thing. Okay, so we're going to go on. So we're going to talk about your mind now. You're 88. Tell me about your health, your knee, what bothers you.
Things are disintegrating as I age, and it's a little bit frightening. I have a bad knee now, so I'm walking with a stick a lot because of balance. The knee kind of tends to make me feel wobbly as I try to not put a lot of pressure on it.
But so how did your tennis, she's been playing tennis for probably the last
So
4
when I
years.
describe my playing tennis, which is still a big thing for me, I go out every morning to
Plays in a group.
and I still play, but when I say, when people ask me if I'm still playing tennis, I stand on the court because I can't move very much. I hit fairly well if I can reach a ball, and I depend on a fast runner to get a ball that I can't reach, and many times that works out well. But I don't play all the time because I think it's unfair to the other players on the court for me to take up time when they could be having really good games.
Okay, what gives you peace every day or during the day or at this time in your life? What do you enjoy, and what just, you know, gives you peace?
It's hard to say.
Let me give you some examples. I'm assuming tennis does, just because you enjoy it so much.
Really being with family gives me peace, I guess, as much as anything.
How many grandkids do you have?
I have 10 I have 10. I have 3 grandkids and
Well, yeah, I guess you
4.
do. Well, if you call,
I have 4 grandkids. That
No.
counts Zoe.
not 4 grand, you got
4.
9 of Shay's.
You're talking about great grandkids.
Oh, see?
Yeah, it is
See
confusing.
what happens
isn't
when
it?
you get old, and I'm only 57.
It is confusing. Let's see.
It's some great grandkids.
Shay has 3 children. Each of them had 3 children, so that makes 9 great grandchildren for me. And then I have a stepdaughter who has a
2.
child who would be my grandchild, and she has a child who would be my great grandchild. So 10 great grandchildren.
I mean, you talking about Zoe and Chloe?
Zoe is
Well,
yeah.
Okay. What was one of the best periods of your life and one of the worst, and why?
Well, one of the best periods of my life, of course, was having each of my boys, and our living together, our time in Aiken. And I guess the worst period of my life was when my marriage fell apart.
Okay, you've been married how many times?
2.
And the second one lasted how long?
38 years, pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. And that was Chuck. And he died of what? When?
He died of a brain tumor in in 2013,
So that's been about
October 2013. So
11
it's-
years ago.
Yeah.
So I guess Beryl, who had died a couple of months before that, died.
My sister, Beryl, had died the year before in 2012.
Okay. Let me ask you that. Describe your mom, your dad, and your relationship with them.
People seem surprised, especially people who knew my family, mother and dad, are always surprised when my sisters and I say that we felt closer to my dad than to my mom. And I am not really sure why, because maybe it's because we're girls and girls are for their dads more than they are for their mom. But it wasn't until after my dad died and we had a lot more time to spend with my mom that it was never a bad relationship. It's just that it wasn't as loving as it was with my dad.
And the reason why we think that way, grandkids, is because we never really knew our grandfather, her father. He died when we were all about 4 or 5, and so really we only knew her relationship with her mom, my grandmother, and my grandmother, her mom. She was like my best friend. We lived in the same town, and I was always helping her at her age, taking her doctor's appointment. So we only saw that relationship, and it just seemed like it was a great relationship. So that's why it was so odd to hear her say that. How about just who was, we're always talking, but I didn't really know them, your father's parents were who?
My father's parents, we called them Weezer and Gonky. My grandfather, Gonky Max Block, was from Belgorod, Russia, which is not too far from the Ukrainian border. And so now at this time, because Ukraine is in a war with Russia and Belgorod is so close, you hear that country being mentioned.
Does Belgorod still exist?
It does.
Same name?
Same name. A lot of Second World War information was destroyed, so I don't know that my grandfather's family could be traced. And also they were Jewish, so they would have been
Subject to
discrimination, I'm sure. Yeah,
Do you
subject to discrimination.
Would you think they would have gone to any of the crematoriums and captured? They were
Well, they were in Russia, so no,
Okay.
they probably would not have been taken.
And do we know how Felix came to this country? Did he come by himself? Did he come with anybody?
Felix Norman. His father came from Sweden. He was from Sweden.
Who?
So we're talking.
Felix's father?
Are you talking about Felix Norman, or are we talking about the Blocks?
Blocks.
Okay, that's two different people.
Okay, but
So Max Block is the one who came from Russia. Felix
Right.
Norman
Right.
came from Sweden.
So Max, how did he come to? Do we know how he came to the States? If he was from Belgorod?
Max was, I think he was 17, maybe 17 or 18 when he came from Belgorod, and his father must have worked on a train. I don't really understand this, but Max dressed as if he were going to a baseball outing of some kind, and got on the train and left. Never went back.
How do you know that? Is it written in one of the?
No, I know it because of my history with my family.
Okay.
And it may be in the book, I'm
And
not
do
sure.
we know if he had any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have his
So he never saw them again, I guess.
His sister and one brother ended up going to Evanston, Illinois, and I met his brother. His brother worked at one of the big department stores at that time in Chicago, and I was visiting some people from my mother's side of the family in Chicago, and I went to that store. I wish I could remember the name of it.
And you met him?
Yeah, it was the largest department store in Chicago for sure, and maybe in the country. He was a small man. He was he worked in the shoe department.
Did he speak English?
He was very friendly. What I regret, I was only 16 at the time, and I regret the fact that he had a sister who also came over, and she had 3 children. She must have married an American. I don't really know much about this story. But she had twin girls and a son, and her son later became somebody who traveled around the country, I guess, as a comedian, sort of entertainer. And he came through Lexington, North Carolina when I was still there. And my father met him, or my mother and father went to the country club where he was performing, got his autograph, talked to him, and they were cousins, but that was about the end of their relationships. Later, when I was in Chicago, I tried to find some of the relationships from my grandfather, but I wasn't able to.
Okay, I never heard that story. And Weezer was Max's wife. Why did she get the name Weezer? And what kind of person was she?
I don't know where the nicknames came from, because her name was Hattie.
Hattie.
Yeah.
Do we know what her last name was?
Yeah, Hattie Cohen, Cohen.
Okay.
And her family evidently came from, she must have been born in Texas. They ended up in New Orleans. She was, she had several sisters. One she was extremely close to, and I did know her children. I didn't know them well, but I later met her children.
Was the sister anything like Weezer? What I remember them talking about, I never knew Weezer, but what I remember them talking about Weezer was the man of the family. I mean, she ruled the roost, is that how you say it?
Well, she
was harsh, seemed harsh.
I just remember my grandfather with a broom in his hand out on the porch sweeping. And it was my grandmother who would, tell him what to do. Interestingly, though, they slept in a double bed when my sister Beryl and I spent weekends with them, which we did often. And my grandfather would take us by the hand and take us to the bus stop and take us to a delicatessen on the bus and buy stuff and go back to the house. So he was very warm, and my sister Beryl and I felt that. My grandmother, Weezer, was not somebody who put her arms around you and hugged you, but she had a harsh upbringing herself. I understand her father was extremely severe with his family. Two of her brothers actually ran away from home and never came back, and they lost contact, and he was just a mean person.
I remember this story. Tell the story about how she used to give you a bath and clean your nose.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, one of the things my grandmother Weezer did was Beryl and I would be put in a bathtub, which at that time they had a really big house, and I may be unusual for a lot of people. Their bedroom had a bathroom connecting it to a second bedroom. And she would put my sister and I in the bathtub, and one of the ways she would clean us was she would twirl the end of a wash rag and then stick it up each side of our nose to pull out anything that happened to be in there and put it in the water. Ooh, yeah.
Okay, we are almost finished with the interview. I have a few more questions. What do you hope for your grandkids? The oldest one, Grayson, is how old? Is he about
12.
Okay, so 12 down to about 4?
Yeah, well, less than that because, 3. Judah is 3.
Okay, so we're living in a time where Russia has invaded Ukraine, trying to recapture land that they think maybe have been theirs at one time. Israel is at war with Hamas and potentially Iran. Tell them that story, what's happening there, short order story.
There's a war between Israel and the Palestinians, and
it came about because of what incident?
It came about because of a terrorist activity from
the Hamas at October 7th, 2023.
Yeah, why am I drawing a sun up? I'm drawing a blank from where these Palestinians came across the border. The president or prime minister of Israel had at one time routes with guards so that anybody coming from the Palestinian side of the territories would be checked before they got into the Israeli side. And he had stopped that or let his guard down, and one day there was a massacre where hundreds of Palestinians did cross and kill.
It was at a music festival.
Yeah. People
were just shot, butchered, raped, and it was on October 7th, which was a little more than a month ago. And then these Hamas terrorists.
It's been a year now, almost a year.
Did I say month?
Almost a year ago.
Yeah, and then they went into kibbutz. I mean, they killed about 1,200 people, in the course of a couple of days. And this is what has led to this Israel war against the Palestinians, Hamas especially. So anyway, my whole point in saying this before you go on
What am I worried about?
Well, that we're living in a time of a Trump possibly could be president, and that just brings a lot of baggage. And there's this war between Russia and Ukraine. There's a war between Israel and Palestine, and
And a lot of terrible things are going on in Africa that you don't even read about.
yeah, really bad.
Yeah.
So
So what do I worry about, or what do I think about the
In
future
this-
for my grandchildren?
Yeah, just because of all of this unrest.
I wish I thought it was going to be really positive, but it's not just the wars that are going on in the world. It's also the violence in our own country, the people, just people breaking into stores in huge numbers so that you can't really control them and taking out stuff. People stealing cars and breaking windshields and doing things that in such large numbers again that it's hard to control because the police branch of our government just doesn't seem to be adequate.
Yeah, they
For
can't
the
keep up
damage.
with everything.
They can't keep up with everything. So yeah, I worry a lot about what's going to happen with my grandchildren and their children and what their future holds. And the other thing is we're now in the era of robots being developed, and robots being developed to the point where they can think and act like people. And I worry and think about that a lot because we already have this ability to do what Scott is doing with me, this interviewing and having something that will last. But
They have the ability to do it, and it would be fake.
Right.
And it's called artificial intelligence.
right, and already in our automobiles, we have a remote ability to get directions, when to turn, where to turn, which way to go to get to a certain place, which we never had when I was a child.
You might be looking for something on your cell phone, Googling something you want to buy, and all of a sudden you get messages sent to you for the same thing. Would you like this? So, and you never even asked for it. That kind
Right,
of thing.
how do they know? Where's that coming from?
Right. And
Yeah, it's frightening to me.
so the last question is about death. Do you have an idea of how long you want to live? Forever, probably, because you like life so much. But what age would you think you're going to die, and how do you think you're going to die?
It's not so much what age would I like to live to, it's what age could I live to and be a normal thinking person who
Healthy enough to do things.
healthy enough to do things and to be able to think on my own.
And I mean, she is more active than I am and most people are. She never stops. I mean, she takes classes all the time. She still drives at 88. She still has her mind.
But I can see a difference. Like at the time that Scott is interviewing me, we are in Philadelphia for the wedding of a friend's son. And normally this would have been a trip I would have made by myself, and I would have gotten my airplane reservations, and I would have gotten the taxi to the hotel, and no problem getting to the wedding. At age 88, it's not that easy, and I might even not have come to this wedding if I had not had Scott to come with me. So there's a lot of difference between the age of 88 and the age of maybe 48, when I did do a lot of traveling, made my own reservations, did my own thing.
I think it's harder.
Yeah, age makes the difference.
If you could see any two people once you die, let's say they were coming to escort you to the promised land, and you only get two, who would they be?
I don't
And it
think
can
I
be-
could answer that.
Think about it. It can be ex-husbands, it could be parents, it could be sisters, it could be friends. Who would you like to see to, make that transition?
I can't think who. I mean, if anybody, it would certainly be my boys, my children. I mean, that would be
You
my
want us
first
to die
thought.
before you? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, is that the only way I would be able to see you in the promised land, is
Yeah.
if you died before me?
Yeah.
Oh, who
I
would
mean-
I
I mean-
see?
I mean, if-
I'm number one. I don't think there is a promised
That was
land. I
another
hate to say
question.
that, but yeah.
So you don't. What do
I
you
don't think
is
I'm going to see
happen?
anybody. I just believe more and more as I get older that life is meant to be lived when you're living it. If there is a promised land, great. I hope that people who are able to get there and do what they want to do and see the people they want to see, I certainly hope that works for them. It's not a promise for me. The promise for me is living this life with people I love.
And one of the things she said a couple of years ago that I will keep with me all the time is, you live, you die.
absolutely what I feel, and I'm sure other people don't feel that way, and great
Yeah.
for them. But
I, on the other hand, think there is something afterwards, whether it's just your soul gets reincarnated. So, to that effect, when I go, assuming you go before me, I would like you and Grenelle, your mother, what I called her Grenelle, and Beryl to come back and escort me and make it easy, that transition.
that sounds
So,
good.
Yeah.
I hope they'll be there for you.
I hope you will too. And that's about the end of our interview. Just wanted to get it on tape since we did this about 10 years ago, and may not do it again, but we may if she could possibly live another 10 years. Anyway, that's all we wanted to do. Thank you, and thank you for doing that.